I just do one type of extraction, it will take it out. So ethanol, all the mold will come over, everyone's going to come over. When you do CO2, the mold won't come over. It's not soluble, but everything that mold made before you took it out is an organic molecule, and that's coming over. Your alpha and beta aflatoxins that the mold made, those will come over. And so now you've made yourself a problem. The other one that I would say is you're moving towards concentration, that if I have something that's 10%, I'm sorry, but there's not a little man, or a little person inside there, you know, separating out things. So whatever you have over here with your M&Ms, with all the different colors, and I just want the blue, well, if you concentrate out all the M&M packages, I'm just making this shit up now, but if you take the package that's not going to come over, then you're still concentrating everyone else. So if THC starts off at 0.1 and you concentrate at 10x, I'm guessing the numbers come out to 1%, which is higher than 0.3 last time I checked. And so everything comes over, so you have to know all the way to the process what comes over. So different processes will allow you to minimize the amount of THC. Ethanol is not one of them.
Can I reiterate your answer?
Yes.
So, I mean, he said it, but it's buried in a lot of other things he said. So,
you have to concentrate it.
Yeah, and I gave a smart-ass answer, so I feel like I really need to give a better answer. So you can purify pesticides out of your mixture, and it really is going to take chromatography. And for most operations, that's cost prohibitive. You're looking at like starting at around $40,000. So, you know, it often is, it does make sense to get rid of the batch and don't put it in the first place. And an issue that people have is you can contaminate your system with pesticides because you put it into your extraction unit and now you've got clean material coming in, but you're contaminating it in your extraction unit.
It's a big one for third-party processors.
Wouldn't the same way people put out lactose from milk? Can you add some sort of an enzyme that will selectively eat whatever stuff you don't want?
The problem is that, can anybody name for me all of the pesticides that are allowed to be used on cannabis?
By the EPA?
None of them. None of the fucking pesticides that exist are approved for putting on cannabis, right? There's the number that we test for, but guess what? People find pesticides that aren't on that list because they just want to pass the test, right? So the issue is not how do we remediate chemical X. The issue is when we don't know what pesticide was used A through Z, what one stroke can we do to get rid of it all?
Oh, yeah.
And that's the real issue, is that, I mean, if we knew it was Eagle 20, sure, we could probably use an enzyme. We can probably do some very specific cost-effective method, but we don't know that it's enzyme. We don't know that it's Eagle 20. We don't know that it's not Agent Orange, because some asshole has it in a bucket in the woods and is still using it.
Even when you're not having a salad that night. Who would think of it? We have a question?
Do people remediate for THC? You'll try to remediate
Yes.
THC?
Oh yeah, lots of.
So there's a lot of ways to do
hear that. What did he say?
remediation of THC. For
What did you say? I
example,
couldn't hear.
He said, do people remediate THC? Because whatever your product is, it's going to define what is a contaminant. And if you've got a hemp product, THC is a contaminant.
Right.
so you can do it by supercritical fluid extraction if you have something that allows you to do a modulation of the extraction, because the solubility between CBD and THC is wildly different. So you can remediate it that way, as well as minimizing it on the extraction side and then maximizing it on your first collector on the backside. But you have to have multiple collectors. You have to have 4 collectors on the backside. And that's just a poor man's supercritical fluid chromatography. Supercritical fluid chromatography allows you to use 98% CO2, 2% ethanol, and just, it's one of the components that you can section off and have it just taken out of the chromatogram. The power of that is that you still keep the CBD and all the other minor cannabinoids. You just take out just take out the blue M&Ms, and all the M&Ms are still left. So that's one way of doing it.
Or crystallization is the other one.
And crystallization, but you can't crystallize THC because it's an oil.
Correct.
Yeah, so
You probably can crystallize CBD and leave the THC in.
So now,
solution.
so that's another way if you're just looking for the CBD, but you've lost all the other friends. You've lost CBC, you've lost CBL, you've lost CBN, you've lost some of the other ones. But again, it's a matter of starting off with what you want, and then from there backing it up. So as I always say, with a COA that comes in, trust God, everyone else bring data, and then retest the data.
Yeah. Well, and
in-house and third-party labs, both have,
Yes.
Well, and also be careful about recrystallization as a purification technique because most people will rush through a recrystallization. And when you do that, you're just including contaminants.
So what do you mean? Let's I can expand. So when you do recrystallization, you heat it up slowly and you cool it down really slowly. The thermodynamics doesn't come in by heating up ethanol, bringing it up to boiling, throwing it in the fridge at minus 80 degrees, and then 2 days later you have crystals. What you have is chemistry says you warm it up, everyone gets into motion, you slow it down so that it falls out of solution slowly. It's chemistry.
Play some, smooth jazz.
I love saxophone. Yourself? Date night?
There you go.
Another question? Got to be more questions. Yes, sir.
Spirometry and separating compounds based on their light refraction value, something I've seen been talked about more and more in the industry. What are the benefits of that versus standard columns?
Well, that's, so you're not talking about, so he's talking about using basically the detector. So you're not talking about a column. So chromatography is going to have two components. It's going to have the mechanism of separation, so your solid phase, your mobile phase and your stationary phase, and then it's going to have a detector. And the detector being either visible light or dynamic light scattering, they're both very effective. However, they are not separation techniques, they are analysis techniques, so it's separation and analysis. Yeah. And you lose a little bit when you just do visible, but not a whole lot. And with dynamic light scattering, it goes beyond visible wavelengths.
So when you're doing that, it actually all it knows is it's differential light scattering, differential refractometry. So it knows what it has for a standard, and the minute it sees something that's a little different, it says, "Oh, I'm different." You don't know exactly what it is. The visible and UV light will allow you to know that it's got a very unique trace for that compound. So when I'm using photodiode array, for example, I can tell immediately whether it's a neutral or it's an acid. Neutral has 2 humps typically, so 228, 263, and an acid usually has 3, it's 228, 263, 313. So I can see if the sea monster gets 3 or if it's got 2, I'll know if it's an acid without even having to know what it is. And so therefore you take out those compounds and know what they are. So that's, sir?
Remedial question, and
Yes.
it's just for me to kind of gauge this.
Okay.
I work for a company that lists cannabis products, and they have a sensor system that detects. They bring the products in and they test it, and they look for impurities like pesticides or whatever.
Yeah.
And then if you pass that test, then you get what's called a blue best product kind of check, and your product sells a lot better, and you're featured higher. Like when there's a search, you're up at the top, and you're also, you're given that status for a certain period of time, and then you have to be retested. When you talk about purity, I hear you saying something where it's like, hey, if you purify, that can remove, I forgot what the guy's name is there, but he was talking about purity meaning,
Jake.
yeah, you talk about purity meaning that the more you purify it, the less, I guess, personality the product
That's
has,
right.
right?
Yeah.
So when you go to 100% purity, does that mean that you're eliminating the style, the flavor
Absolutely.
of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
So you're cutting off your nose to spike face, right?
Oh, no,
By
so
purification.
Flavor comes off first. If you're talking about any kind of resemblance to the flower, it's the most light volatile molecule when it's gone.
Because you stomp the
with
shit
just
out of it to get
blowing
to
air
purity,
on it.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you keep going all the way down, processing it more and more and more, and then it's a
Right.
powder. There's nothing left.
a good analogy is a cocktail, right? Okay, if you like a martini, grain alcohol isn't going to do it for you. It's not a martini anymore. I mean, I can take a martini and put it into a rotary evaporator and distill it until it's 95% alcohol.
But that is shit.
But yeah, it doesn't taste like olives. It doesn't taste like vodka.
It's not dirty.
It's nothing. It's
Right.
not, it's just grain alcohol.
Right.
And that's what you potentially are doing with your cannabinoids. And if, you know, you've got a market for pure